Welcome to the Battle Buddy Podcast with Keith McKeever.
Welcome back, Battle Buddies. I've got another Battle Buddy with us here, Dr. Ann James. I'm going to go ahead and throw her banner up there because she really is a Battle Buddy. She has her own podcast, Freedom Battle Buddies of Color. It's almost like a sister podcast. We haven't even talked about that.
Right.
And we're both Air Force veterans. You know, so there's weird connections all over the place. It's a small world.
Exactly.
But Dr. Ann James, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, Keith, thank you so much, man, for having me here. I appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, no problem. It's always great to talk to another podcaster because you kind of know like what to expect and personality and all that stuff. So I'm always excited to interview another podcaster. And we're going to talk about financial stuff because that is your arena, financial stuff. And like I was just telling you a couple minutes ago, kind of heads up on some of the questions. I had this epiphany. I'm like, who really needs this financial advice? Well, we probably all need financial advice to some degree. But I felt like this is a great episode to pull back the curtain a little bit for those 18 to 25-year-olds or those who maybe just got out of the military young, never had the financial education or literacy. Because let's face it, we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different levels of understanding of how the financial world works. So I figured let's keep it to the basics and let's speak to those people who could probably need to start with step one because you don't finish the race without the first step. So before we get into that, introduce yourself. What is your story? How did Ann James become an airman and how did she become a doctor?
Wow. Where do I begin right now? No, but thanks, Keith. I definitely appreciate you inviting me into the show. Like you said, yeah. Battle buddies, near and dear to both of us. So, I'm Dr. Ann James. I'm the CEO of Financial Freedom Battle Buddies. That's basically a financial education company where I work with women veterans to help them, renew their mindset around money, to regain control over their behavior, and to reclaim confidence in their ability to manage their money so that they can live life freely. It all started for me. I'm a military brat. My dad was my stepfather, I should say, was in the Army. So I knew that I wasn't going to do Army. But once my oldest brother went to the Air Force, I went to visit him one summer and I just liked everything that I saw, and stuff like that. So as a way for me to get money for college and a way to travel, I chose to join the Air Force straight out of high school. So yeah, like you said, I'm one of those youngins that didn't know any better. First time away from home. I ended up being stationed overseas and I went crazy. You know what I mean? You know how it is when you first join the military, you have that stability of the paycheck, right? On the 1st and the 15th, you know that you're going to get paid. So the military provided pretty much everything for me, right? So I'm talking about living in the dorm. So I had a place to live. Of course, our uniforms. So I had pretty much what to wear, even food, the meal card, right? Going to the dining hall to eat food. They provided a lot of our necessities in life. So the money that I did earn, I spent it the way that I loved to do at the time, which was shopping and traveling and stuff like that. So I went, I would say crazy. I mean, I really enjoyed life. I enjoyed myself, that type stuff not to say until I had my daughter, but, eventually with the military, I found myself, falling in lust, I should say. And shortly after that, I became pregnant. And shortly after that, we got married and got divorced. So whirlwind life, so to speak. But it wasn't until, one day, Keith, I was in a doctor's office. I had taken my daughter, her name is Kayla, and she was about, I don't know, 2 or 3 around that time. And I noticed she wasn't speaking like quote unquote normal kids or, kids her age should be doing.
Right.
It was at that appointment that my life forever changed. Is that the doctor told me, and I can hear his words, but I just saw his mouth moving, but it was like, what? He told me she was developmentally delayed. Right. And I didn't even know what that meant. This is back in the day. I'm not going to date myself. Right. But this is back in the day where he said she was developmentally delayed, but what is now known as autism. My daughter is autistic. So it was at that moment that I knew that, my life had to change. My mother always told me that you have to be in a position to take care of your children no matter what. And I knew the way that I was living with all the shopping, all the credit card debt. I mean, it was so bad, Keith. I had a car that I could not drive because it was a stick shift. Okay. And I was paying, I was making payments on it. Right. So when me and my, boyfriend and ex-husband broke up and stuff, my supervisor had to teach me how to drive this car that I was paying for. Right.
Wow.
So just crazy foolishness. I knew that my life I wasn't in a position to take care of my daughter, who now, was diagnosed with special needs. And I didn't know what that meant. I'm like, what does that mean? Does that mean she's going to live with me forever? Type stuff. So I knew that I had to get my life in order. Not just my life, but really my finances. I didn't want my mistakes with money to hamper my daughter's future, going forward. So I self-educated myself. Back in the day, it was Dave Ramsey at the base chaplain, the Financial Peace University, that type stuff. So I took that course, drank the Kool-Aid, and I just really followed his, steps, adjusting it to my own lifestyle to really help me get on the road to what my definition of financial freedom. I was able to, pay off that car and eventually be able to pay off, my home outright, over $300,000 worth of debt within 3 years. So, how I became Dr. Ann along the way is once I transitioned after 20 years of service. I forgot to mention that I went in enlisted, but about the halfway part, I do what they say, I crossed over to the dark side and I earned my commission. I know, right? I earned my commission from Det 775, University of South Carolina, go Gamecocks, ROTC. And then I became a financial officer. But after doing all that, 21 years of service, I was fortunate to retire. I was ready to transition. I had planned and prepared myself. And once I transitioned, I still had my GI Bill, back in the day before Montgomery. Before the post 9/11, I had the Montgomery GI Bill. And that's why I decided to just go back to school and earn my doctorate, because I already had my master's. And that's how I became Dr. Ann.
Yeah, what's a couple more years?
I know, right? I ain't got nothing better to do.
I shouldn't listen to my own advice. I just got my bachelor's degree. And what about your master's? I'm like, oh, man, I am so burned out right now on school.
Master's is actually easier than a bachelor's.
Is it? Oh, come on, don't tell me that.
It is. You only have to take, it depends on what school, like an additional 10 classes, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I've looked into a few different programs, but I don't know. I need a mental break for a little while, at least a semester, or something like that. I didn't mind, full time for the last 3 years using my Montgomery GI Bill before it expired.
Okay.
It was kind of brutal, especially half of it during the pandemic. Online classes. I was actually taking calculus. When the pandemic hit. And I'm not going to lie, I was not doing that great in class with the calculus. And then the pandemic hit. We went home for spring break, and they extended a week, and then we came back, and it's like, it's all online. All of a sudden, the help lab is gone. All the student tutors are gone. There's no extra resources, and I'm sitting there like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
I definitely don't know what's going on now. And I passed. I have no idea how, but I passed. And it was brutal. Then I went and took statistics the next semester. Oh, man, it was brutal. But you know what? It makes you stronger, right? You come out the other end.
That's what they say.
And you look back and you're like, it's kind of crazy to do that as an adult, to go back to school and do all that. But it's an accomplishment. But
yeah, we have our own reasons, right? I
absolutely.
You have children, young children. So, to set that example, So I definitely get it.
You got to do. And speaking of kids, that is a heck of a motivator, especially in your situation to get this diagnosis for your daughter and to just be like, okay, what does life look like now? Right. Yeah. I don't want to say, like, even with my kids, you can't predict the future. You can't sit there and be like, well, this is going to happen or that's going to happen. But you do get this idea in your mind. You got kids, you're expecting them to hit certain milestones and do certain things. And then when you get something like that, it's like, well, what does that picture look like?
Exactly.
I got a niece and a nephew on the spectrum, and, we don't even know what that's going to look like for my sister. Is one or both of them going to have to live with them at home? Who knows?
Yeah.
They both have totally different issues on the spectrum.
Exactly.
And, but they're still kids and you still love them and they still give you
That's
headaches.
right.
And
That's right. Exactly. That's right.
that's
Yes,
kids.
sir.
Nothing changes there. So,
Nothing changes there.
but speaking of what changed, so that's what changed for you. So what was your first step that you did? Was it Dave Ramsey? Was it something else?
Yeah, I would say the first tactical step, of course, Dave Ramsey, he has these 7 baby steps, and that's the
Yep.
thing about, I guess, I don't know if it was me being in the military, I just like the structure, do this, and do that, right? But as I went along, doing those steps, I realized that some things I had to change. First, I kind of had to take a step back, excuse me, and be like, wait a minute, because I was still finding myself with those bad habits, right? Like charging and be like, oh, it's just a little bit of debt or whatever have you. So I had to really dig down deep and be like, okay, what's going on here? And by, once again, self-educating myself, it really starts in your mind. You have to have a made up mind before, you can do these steps, but if you really don't deal with the root of the problem, like, some of the things I heard while I was growing up, that it still had an effect on me as an adult, and not dealing with those things, made it manifest themselves in the way that I spent money and stuff like that. So I had to deal with some other things before the tactical steps of, how to get out of debt, how to budget really took hold in my life so that I can start my journey to financial freedom. So yeah.
Yeah. I've kind of followed Dave Ramsey for a few years because personal finance, I think I told you before, is kind of one of those things I enjoy. I wouldn't say I know a lot about it. I'm definitely no expert.
Yeah.
But I've kind of followed him for a few years, and I can't remember exactly what order those things are. But it makes sense.
Mhm.
But it doesn't necessarily make sense for everybody. I felt the same way too. Like, I think personally, first thing you should do is a budget. You should know exactly how much money you make, and you should know exactly what all of your bills are and when they're due, and you should have them on some sort of a timeline or laid out so you can look at it and know where you're at before you can figure out. Trying to think of what the first thing is, like the snowball, right? Or was it paying the smallest ones first and then building up to the big ones? I think is what he teaches. I think it's one of his first steps or something. But
yeah, that's like his third step. His actual first step is building an emergency fund, which is $1,000, which I totally agree with, because you just never know when an emergency is a true emergency, not something that, oh, I forgot, but a true emergency. Like if we're, I don't know, stationed overseas somewhere, we need to get a plane ticket home. Instead of charging it, we might have, the money in our account to cover it. So you have a true emergency, $1,000. And then you go into the baby steps with the debt, that type stuff. But you're absolutely right, meaning that, you have to have a budget to know your starting position, that type stuff. But
yeah, it's really
it is
budget
personal.
mindset.
Yeah, it's personal.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely better to have $1,000 or $2,000 as an emergency fund rather than putting that on a credit card.
Right.
Because if you can find a credit card under 15% interest, you're hitting the lottery probably. I think most of them are like 20 to 25% interest, and I don't think a lot of young people probably realize that how credit works. And I see the incentives all the time. I get them here at my house. I'm sure everybody else does. I'll open up this credit card. It's only 22% interest.
Yeah.
But we're going to give you a ton of miles for this or miles for that. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing because it may work for some people, right? If you're financially sound enough to be like, okay, I'll get it, I'll use it, I'll pay it off, and I'll utilize the benefits. That's not a problem.
Right.
The problem is when you don't have the willpower to say no, or you don't have the budget in place to be able to pay that off in time. I once bought was it a washer, dryer? Gosh, I can't remember. It was a Sears. Actually, it might have been 2 at the same time. Anyway, it was probably $1,200. Put it on a store credit card. I think it took me 3.5 years to pay it off, and I think I paid over $2,000 for it.
Yeah, those
you look
credit
back
cards
and you're
are
like,
the worst.
Did I need the washer and dryer? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was still serving at that time too. Like I needed to clean my uniforms. Like you gotta have them, but it's
Yeah.
like you look back on it like, wow, it definitely would have been better to have the cash to pay for that.
Yeah.
I could have used that extra $800 to $1,000 on something else,
Yeah. No,
food,
absolutely.
utilities, whatever. So
Absolutely. It's just being, like you said, smart and, making better informed decisions, right? If you need something, there's a difference, your need versus a want, right? So you needed a washer and dryer. Now, if could have done some research, like I said, the store credit cards are the worst as far as interest rate, you know what I'm saying? So but that's
yeah,
how
they're
they
pretty
get
bad.
you, especially when we was talking about the younger troops and stuff. That's how they get you. I know how they got me in the mall. You want to open up this? I think that was my first credit card was
The Star card?
no, when
No,
it
was
was in
it?
the from the mall. I think it
Oh,
was a
okay.
store called Learners back in the day. But it's like, okay, if you open this up, you get an additional 30% off. Type stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, I can save money and this is on sale, that type stuff. I didn't know nothing about no interest rate. I just knew I was getting a discount on something that was already on sale. So it's just really about educating yourself and making those informed decisions.
Yes, and it goes beyond that too. It goes to your credit score, and you open up that new line. Now your length
Oh
of
yeah.
history is shorter, and people are like, well, why? Open up a credit card, and I have a
Yeah.
$2,000 balance. Why did my score go down 50 points? Well, it's
Yeah.
because you took your length of history from 5 years down to 2 because you just opened up a new card.
There you go.
It's that's what eye-opening to me because I'm in real estate, and the more I learn
Mm.
about credit, it's like, man, it's a game.
It's a game.
Like it's a game, it's a system, it is rigged against you. It's like going to the casino in some ways.
Yeah.
Like it's
You just gotta learn to
mind-blowing.
play the game.
Exactly. You got to know the rules of the game, right? You can't win at Monopoly if you don't know the rules of the game, right?
Hey, you
Cheat
can't be
first.
mad at the players. Yeah,
I
you
mean,
can't be mad at those that know how to play the game.
but that's what it is, and that's where financial literacy comes in is like knowing and
Yeah.
understand. Like once again, to mindset. Once you have that mindset of this is a game, they're kind of out to get me. How do I mitigate my chances of failure? And you get even tied into the military of like, you don't do operations. No operations happen in the military without planning, hopefully proper planning, but you don't do anything without SOPs, plans, operations orders, all that stuff. Like you get as much of a picture of what you're trying to do before you go do it.
Yeah.
And you have a team, and I think that's where, people, you need to look at financial stuff the same way of like, get the education, get the information, listen to the experts, and now you're informed. And then now you can take action, informed action versus, I see it all the time in my business. People are like, oh, I'm working on my credit. And then they start explaining stuff they do. And it's like, do you realize that it's okay to not use your credit card, like pay your credit cards off and not use them? That's fine.
Yeah.
You could use them to buy gas every week and pay it off. That would help. Yeah. But if you don't want to use them, that's fine. But the last thing you should do is shut the accounts off.
Yeah.
I hear stuff like that, and I'm like, who is counseling you?
Yeah.
Once again, it goes back to the history, your credit history, like the length of the file, and it's like, oh man, who is telling people this stuff? Like,
yeah,
there's some doozies out there.
There is, and that's the thing. Like you said earlier, it's not cookie cutter. I like to say money is personal. It's called personal finance for a reason. Right? So my reason is different from Keith's reason, is different from this person's reason. So whatever that reason is, or whatever your why is that's driving you, that's what you tend to rely on when you make, hopefully, your financial decisions. So I totally agree. Yeah.
And it's going to vary by where you're at too. If you're going to have to put more money into your food budget if you live in Alaska, because evidently the prices are ridiculous there from what I hear. If you live in California, you're probably going to have to put more in housing.
Exactly.
I'm in Illinois. You could buy a house for $200,000 here that would cost you $1 million in California, and it blows my mind.
Yeah,
never understood how that works, but it's mind blowing, So you have to know where you're at, what you're doing, what your goals are. You need to project these things out. So
exactly.
It's important to do that kind of stuff. So
exactly.
But we keep kind of come back to mindset. Is one of the first things, budget and mindset. So how should somebody's mindset be shifted, or how should they look at shifting their mindset in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, ooh, that's a good one. That's a good question. I always like to tell my clients one of the ways that they can change their mindset is really determining where they're at, right? Where are their current mindset at? Do you have a mindset of scarcity, like you'll never have enough? You're always scrounging around for stuff. Or do you have an abundance mindset, meaning that, hey, I know that there's enough out there for everybody. You know what I'm saying? So I believe that when you have an abundance mindset, you'll attract that versus if you have a scarcity mindset, you're going to attract that as well. I'm here to tell you, I had a scarcity mindset for the longest, right? Because like I said, when you're single and you have a child and now you got a child with special needs, I was like holding on tight to money. I was like, don't ask me for nothing. You didn't, I ain't got it. That type. No, I
Yeah.
can't. That costs too much. Let me use my coupons. That type stuff. I was really tight with money. But as things start changing for me, and as I learned about mindset and having an abundance mindset, I was able to start, releasing things and opening up my hands to know that it'll come back to me so I don't have to be, so tight with money. So I would definitely say try to recognize where you're at in regards to, what type of mindset you have. Another one I like to talk to my clients about, Keith, is what I call your money talk, right? It goes back to the mindset, but what do you say about money, right? Do you always say, oh, I'm always going to have debt? I'm always going to have a car payment. Okay, you say what you have, right? Versus if you flip that conversation and start saying things as oh, I'm never going to have debt again. I'm going to pay cash for a car. I don't have a mortgage. I'm going to lend money instead of borrow it, type stuff. So it's just like, what are you saying? You have to really watch the words that are coming out of your mouth about money. Because if you're constantly saying negative stuff, negative stuff, negative stuff, then that's what you're going to see in your life. So you have to just really watch your words when it comes to what you're saying about money. And also, who are you hanging around with, right? I like to say, don't hang around with 10 broke people because you might be number 11. Okay. So it's like you have to hang around with like-minded people. Money sometimes is already seen as a taboo, to talk about, oh, we don't talk about that in public, that type stuff. But no, you have to be willing to openly talk about money um, and just surround yourself with people you want to emulate. I remember a friend of mine telling me, like when she found out that I was, debt free, she was like, wow, you're the first person that I know is debt free. And this person, she makes more money than I do. She has 2 kids and has all kinds of debt. But by her looking at me and us hanging around each other, it became, well, if she can do it, I can do it too. I make more money than her, that type stuff. So just, all of those type things really comes into play to help you improve your mindset. But you have to first be aware of where your mindset even is. What limiting beliefs do you have in your life surrounding money, and what actions can you take to turn those things around to the positive? So, yeah.
I 100% agree, and that's a really deep question for people to answer.
It is. It
Like,
is, but it
wow.
boils down to what's important. And it's a buzzword, but what's your why? What is your priority in life? And everything that I did back in the day, leading up to financial freedom, and everything I continue to do is because of my daughter. That is what drives me. And knowing that, I'm not going to make, the same mistakes that I made when I was in my teens, in my 18, just joining the military. That's why I always, anytime that I have a chance to talk to the younger military people, I do, because I feel like I'm talking to myself. What advice would I give myself? So, it is, yeah, if it's hard to grasp, just, take a little piece of it and run with it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
almost all of us feel like we should just reach out and grab those young troops by the collar and be like, listen here.
Yeah.
This
And
is
it
the
don't have to
mistake
be
I did.
yeah. It don't make the same stupid mistakes. I mean, if it's just one thing, right? If they just take one thing. I remember one of my supervisors back in the day, man. I mean, he was like, I'm dating myself when savings bonds was the big, the big those Series E savings bonds. I mean, or better yet, here's something they can probably relate to: the allotments, right? Setting up an allotment where you have money going straight into the savings account. It don't even hit your account, right? So that's
Right.
why I tell people, okay, you're about to get promoted. 1 January is right around the corner. You're gonna, your cost of living allowance for our veterans, or say if you're gonna get promoted or whatever have you, that increase in income, you're used to living without it. So why don't you just find that difference, set up an allotment, or put it to your savings account and save it, or use it to throw it towards debt. Don't increase your way of living just because you have more income. You continue to live as you already are. That's what did it for me. Like I said, I was enlisted and I reached the rank of E6 before I switched over. But once I became a lieutenant and a captain, I still lived off as if I was an E6. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I was used to. Everything else was gravy. Yeah, I bought me a lieutenant mobile that I can afford, that type stuff. But, you just have to, what's important to you and what's going to drive you for the long haul. And just make sure you enjoy yourself along the way.
Yeah, you can have materialistic things and still
Absolutely.
not go into like crazy debt. I had a client once that relocated to this area. Husband and wife had great jobs. Great jobs. They bought a house on one of their salaries. Just one. Because they had a bunch of kids. But I think they also felt like, hey, if they have more kids, she may be out of work for a little while. She may decide not to go back to work. And they had the financial forethought to think, let's buy on one income. And that way, if she is working and making extra money, fine, it's great. Retirement account, college account, whatever they did with it, I don't know. But it blew my mind. I had never, that's the only client I've ever had that I'm aware of that's done that. That's like, look, nope, we don't even want to consider the other person's income. Just one person's income. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about living below your means. That's exactly, that's a way to do it.
And they had enough means to buy a very nice, comfortable house for themselves right here in this area. But, I see all kinds of people, getting house poor, buying a house at the top of their budget. Maybe it's not necessarily the house. Maybe it's the $100,000 SUV, which still blows my mind. You better be able to sleep and go to the bathroom in that thing for that
That
price.
is their house.
That's very quickly approaching an RV value, but
oh my goodness.
But I see it all the time of people just get too much house, too much car, too much for what you really need. Like I always tell people, I'm not a car person. All I need is 4 wheels that run and something that's reliable and it's not loud.
Yeah.
I can make phone calls on Bluetooth that I'm a rumbling noises or something, and I said that for years, and I upgraded to a Ford Fusion hybrid. And I love my car. It's nice. Yeah. It was like a special treat, but it took a lot of, looking at the budget and be like, oh, well, we can do this because I'll be honest, I'm a very cheap person. I don't have that scarcity mindset. I'm
frugal.
Just very frugal. Yeah. I think you have to be like, do I need this, or is there another alternative that is cheaper that gets the job done?
Absolutely.
Like, do you need the $75,000 car, or does the $20,000 car that's also a year or two old also fit your needs? Does it hold 5 people and get you from point A to point B? Because both of them do,
Yeah, exactly.
If you got the money to pay for the $75,000 car, by all means, have at it.
Have at it. Exactly.
But if it's a stretch, maybe you should reevaluate your priorities. Because I think it all comes to a goal. And you hit on it with your daughter. Like you looked at the future and was like, I don't know what I'm going to need, but I need to change things so that I have the financial means to take care of whatever comes next.
Yeah.
I know I look at my future and I say, I want to do this X, Y, and Z, and I know that by doing that, I'm going to, I can't sell my house and move into a house that's twice as expensive. Like it doesn't make any sense. My house works perfectly fine. I'd like a 2-stall garage. It's not the end of the freaking world, you know.
Right?
I actually got my car in the garage this winter, which is a bonus because it's actually snowing right now.
Oh.
It's not pleasant, but I'm not that happy about it. It is what it is. I can't avoid it. I'm in Illinois, but
Exactly.
you know, it's about sacrifices. It's about vision, mindset, like all these different things. So
yeah,
you know, that's how you get to the financial freedom. So what does that look like, financial freedom, to you? You know, because I think that's should be a goal of everybody's. I know it's a goal of mine.
Yeah. And that's a great point. Everybody's definition of it is different, and it's so funny. That's like one of my leading questions on my podcast is like, what is freedom to you? But specifically, financial freedom to me is the ability or having a mindset to do whatever I want, when I want, without ever worrying about money. So, and whatever that is, that I love to travel. That's why I tell people, you can't tell people how to spend their money, right? Some people might want to spend it on cars, might want to spend it on houses. I like, similar to yourself, I'm in the real estate, so I have several, rental properties and stuff like that. But I like to spend my money on experiences, traveling and stuff like that, and being able to, do that freely, all inclusive, first class. That's what I do. But you know what I'm saying? But that's financial freedom to me. And I just want to say that don't get it twisted just because you see the doctor in front of my name. Right. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a doctor of education. And as I mentioned, I started out as an E1. Right. So money didn't, I wasn't born with money, that type stuff. There's levels to this, as they would say. So, it just really depends on the person. But for me, it's just being able to do what I want when I want, not wanting to work again. When I retired from the military, I knew that I did not want to go back to anybody's job, nobody telling me what to do. So I knew I was going to be my own boss, right? And it's just a lovely thing to be able to do what you love to do on your own terms and stuff like that. So financial freedom, I believe, is a journey, right? It's not some place it's not a destination. Oh, I'm here. Okay, we can stop now. I've arrived. No, this is something you have to maintain, right? It's a journey. So
I got this right here. I'll hold it up. Success is a journey, not a destination.
Dude,
I got this in my
head. Exactly. That's it. It's a journey, not a destination, because you're constantly learning, you're constantly adjusting. But the biggest thing is to make sure that you enjoy your life along the way. We've talked about making sacrifices and what's important. Yes, that's part of it. But if you're not enjoying life, celebrating those wins, what difference does it make, right? So I just say sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride.
Exactly. And no doubt about it, life is going to give you some ups and downs. Like, I give you some hills and some turns and some things you're not ready for. So
exactly,
you gotta have a plan. All you can do is sit back and enjoy the ride. It's like being on a roller coaster. You can't do nothing about that turn or that loop that's coming up in front of you. You're strapped in.
Brace yourself.
It's coming. You better be prepared. You got about a second to blink before it's here. But
exactly.
Yep, that's all some great advice.
It all starts with a plan, like you said, a mindset, and then a plan, and then taking action. And nothing's going to be perfect. It's progress over perfection. So
absolutely, and the thing people need to realize is that anybody can do this. You just have to have the right mindset, and you have to take the first step. Budget, figure out where you're at, and then if you want to follow Dave Ramsey or if you want to follow somebody else's plan, whatever. Just find a plan, stick to it, work towards it. As long as you got the right mindset, I think you're on the right path.
I totally agree. There's so many things, like you said, you can Google it. This isn't rocket science. When I work with clients, I tell them, this isn't something that I'm pulled out of the sky. It's based off of my experiences, that I created to fit my lifestyle. Therefore, I'm teaching it to others. But yeah, you can Google a budget. You can Google anything, but you have to make it so that it works for you and your individual situation. What works for Dr. Ann may not work for Keith, and vice versa. finances is personal for a reason. So just make your mindset up, finding that plan and go to work and adjust as necessary. It's not going to be perfect. So I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you this. Just a random question I just kind of thought of, kind of a 3-part question.
Oh, 3-part random question.
So any other advice that you would have for that demographic of that 18 to 25-year-olds that just got in the military or been in, I don't know, 5-6 years, whatever, that are having financial troubles? Any additional advice for them?
Wow. I would say to seek help. Don't fall into the realm of stigma, thinking that you're weak or whatever have you, asking for help. The same, we talk about seeking help when we talk about mental things and stuff like that. The same go for your finances. I know if you're active duty, there's resources on base. I say base, I'm Air Force, I'm post for Army, wherever your installation. There's resources on your installations that's free to you. If you don't feel comfortable going to your local installation, there's individuals like myself, organizations in the civilian sector that works directly with military personnel. So you just want to once again do your research when you're working with people, because people tend to think, they might see your military and take advantage of it, that type stuff. But I would say, if you're finding yourself in experiencing some type of financial problems, seek the help. Don't put your head in the sand and try to avoid it. That type of stuff. You're not the only one.
Oh, definitely.
So you're not the only one. So just get over yourself and get the help that you need so you can continue to go on with your life. So that's one thing I would say.
Realistically, they're definitely not the only one. They can look to their left and look to their right, and I almost guarantee you somebody to your left or to your right is having the same or very similar problems.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, all the way back in the beginning here, that we all have different levels of financial literacy. And then you go into 18 years old, what do you know about life? What do you know about a consistent paycheck and all these things, right? You don't know any of that. And stuff's just given to you, and now you got money, and now you can go spend it on things. And nobody's there to teach you about anything.
Exactly.
Probably I hate to say it like this because I was an NCO, but I think those young troops become NCOs, and if they don't have the financial literacy, they can't turn right around and mentor the young troops and keep them out of financial problems.
Exactly.
And so sometimes it's a failure of the NCOs, but it's not necessarily their failure. It's the failure of who's now the senior NCOs or generations before, and it's just kind of piggyback. But
you don't know what you don't know, right? So
exactly.
that's the thing. So you're absolutely, it's like it trickles downhill type stuff. But self-education is big. That's what I did. I self-educated myself. I read books, I watched, webinars, I still listen to podcasts, all of those things. You can self-educate yourself. It's not rocket science. And don't think, oh, I'm not good with math, that type stuff. That's scarcity mindset. There's apps now. There's a spreadsheet I'm going to provide Keith, is that it does the math for you. So now what's your excuse? You know what I'm saying? So
if you can join the military, you can push the buttons on the keyboard. I'm sure somebody in your unit knows how to use Excel.
Exactly. Or you know what, Keith? You can old-fashioned pen and paper does just fine, and a calculator. Okay.
Come on, Doc. Nobody knows how to do math by hand anymore.
Get a calculator.
Oh yeah. Oh, that would help. Yeah. I don't have one in my office anymore. My kids broke mine somehow. I don't know. At least I got my phone. My phone still works. I got one on the computer.
There you go. Got a calculator on your phone. Exactly.
Yep. So the part 2 of this question is, and I thought of this because you've lived these unique experiences. You got to E6, then you commissioned. So for those people in that, I don't know, E5, E6, E7, range, middle of their career, 8, 10, 12 years in, what kind of financial advice do you have anything else extra for them?
Oh man, this is like my sweet spot. No, what I would say is you need to, no matter if you plan on staying in 20 years or getting out in the next 3 years, you need to plan for your transition. The transition out of the military is inevitable. You're not going to be able to stay in the military forever, right? So you need to plan not just financially, but really mentally, because that has a lot to do with it as well. Your identity, outside of the military. Once you take your uniform off, what type of career you want to have? Do you want to come back to work as a civilian, or do you want to do entrepreneurship? You need to plan for that. So yeah, you need. That's the thing. I think a lot of people make the mistakes. They don't plan for getting out of the military, or they think, especially those unexpected transitions, right? If you get hurt, you get injured, type stuff, or oh, I'll retire, I'll be good. No, I knew, once again, like I tell you, when I switched over, once I decided to stay in, because I was going to get out at 8 years in. I mean, I had orders in hand, but somebody changed my mind. But I was going to get out, but once I decided to stay in, I knew I was going to make the most of it so that when I do retire in those 10, 12 years, I didn't want to have to work again. If I wanted to work, I worked, but I didn't want to have to work again. So that's why you need to start planning. I'm thankful I was in a good job. I was personnel, I was finance. So I had the skills that was transferable. But if you find yourself in those skills that are not transferable, okay, what are you doing now to change that? Are you going for a degree that's more marketable, that type stuff? I know certain jobs are harder than order to go to school. I get it. But there is life outside of the military, and you need to plan for it accordingly.
Yeah, even if you do 20 years, 20, 22 years, you get out of 38, 40, somewhere in there, right?
Exactly.
You still have another 20 to 25 years of work life to the typical retirement age.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother life.
Yeah.
And I think people don't realize that you got, your childhood to 18, 20 years old. If you do a whole career in the military, that's another 15, 20 years, 25 years, whatever it ends up being, for a variety of issues there. And then you still have another 20, 25 years after that. And then you got retirement. It breaks it up into different sections of life, and having a good financial footing will make your transition way smoother.
Yes.
I cannot not pound the table enough on that one. That is a huge pillar to success.
Yes.
Huge.
Yes. I mean, you're already dealing with a lot of challenges when you transition. Anyway, myself, I did not say my transition was a success. That's why I did my dissertation on it, the success factors. What does it take to have a successful transition? And some of those factors was, like we said, the planning and the preparation, the networking, right? Using your skills and knowledge from the military. Those are all factors that come into play in order for you to have a successful transition. So don't buy into the myth that everybody's transition is difficult. No, mine wasn't. I mean, and it's probably because I was ready to go, and I had I had
mindset
for it. Yeah, it's your
Yeah,
mind.
you're ready.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like it doesn't have to be a difficult transition as you hear, on the news and stuff like that. It's just preparation, I think, is key. The military, I don't think do a good job with that. A year out, you need to, I say from day one, no matter what, if you're just going in for 3, 4, 6 years, what are you gonna do? So that when you get out, you're setting yourself up, for success. So
I've actually said that a few times, that the transition out should start before you even join.
Yeah,
in my opinion, you should realize that I don't care if you enlist for 4 and do 4, or you enlist for 4 and end up doing 20. Like you said earlier, your time is up. Like
your time is up. It's inevitable.
And I hate to put a negative spin on it, but they're just going to push you out the door, and your replacement's coming in.
Hello.
And they're not going to care about you. Now you're part of our cool kids club of veterans.
Hello.
We'll take care of you the best we can. But the military is not going to care about you anymore. Now your VA medical stuff is on you, your career, your finances, all that stuff is on you. You got to figure all that stuff out.
Yeah.
It's,
Absolutely.
and it can be difficult, but mine was pretty easy.
Good.
I was unemployed for about a month, got a job selling furniture. There was a small group of us. There was manager, assistant manager, another sales guy, and me, and a guy in a warehouse. There was other parts of the store, but the company I worked for was kind of broken up. So like we only worked together. The other people were in the building, but we would just, casually say hi or chit chat. But
Right.
so we had a very small group. It was less than a squad. I mean, it was 6, 7 people. Even if the delivery guys were there, it was 8, 9 people most.
Yeah.
And so I went from that, because I was security forces, went from that small where we really did things in fire team levels and stuff like that sometimes to basically the same thing. Small group of people. I worked 60, 70 hours a week with these people. We did everything together. We ate together. It was a furniture store, so we moved all the furniture. We unloaded the trucks. We loaded people's vehicles. Like, we did it all together.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like, that made my transition easy. Like,
Yeah.
I blinked, and it was I'd been out for a year, transitioning into real estate at that point in time, and I'm like, oh, what happened? And then I see
Yeah.
on Facebook, one of the reasons I started this podcast is I see people struggling all the
Yeah.
time.
They
And it's
struggle,
financial,
unfortunately.
it's relationships, it's all these different things. Like,
Right.
and I've had this kind of epiphany of a good transition sets up the pillars to success. The success being the roof, if you want to picture it like that.
Mhm.
One of them is financial. One of them is personal relationships. One is
Oh.
connections.
Uh,
And one of
Yes.
them in employment and education, right?
Yeah.
Like, and
Totally.
if one or two of those pillars is gone, the roof is going to collapse. And we know where the roof collapsing leads to. It leads to alcohol, drug abuse, and suicide.
Yeah. Homelessness.
Prison, homelessness. I mean,
All of that. Yeah. Yeah.
that situation is not pretty for anybody,
That's right.
And so, that's why when I say, like, we're both sitting here saying that your financial success is going to be a huge factor in that. It's a huge pillar, and that's something that you can work on from day one. And join in the military, know you're going to get out, have a plan, invest that money,
Yeah.
be smart with it, work it to your success. You can make some.
You can make it happen. Yeah.
There's some people who come out on the other end of 20 years in some pretty good financial situations, that live well below their means in investing.
Hello.
So it's not impossible.
It's not impossible.
Definitely not impossible. So,
no, sir.
But that's good advice. Some good stuff for those people in mid-career.
Yeah.
Now, about the people that make it to 20 or 25, 30 and decide to retire, any particular advice for those individuals?
Wow. Once again, what do you want to do after the military? You know what I mean? I think I see it so often, especially, like myself, we're in for 20 years or whatever. And if the military is all you know, right? Like me, straight out of high school into the military, 21 years, that's all I knew. So my identity was tied, right, to my military service. Like my uniform, oh, I'm a captain, I'm this, I'm that, type of stuff. But once you get out, you're in. Don't nobody care what your rank was, that type of stuff. And that's why research shows that veterans, they go through what's known as a veteran identity crisis, right? Because they lose a sense of purpose. What now? Who am I if I'm not doing this? What am I here for, right? That type stuff. So once again, it just goes back to, before you retire, what's important to you? What's your ideal job, or, what do you want to do or continue to give back, or whatever it is that's important to you as an individual once you transition? What does that look like? Do you want to comfortably be able to live off your retirement check? I did, and I still do, right? So everybody's situation is different, but once again, does life after the military look like?
Yeah.
It goes back for both, you know what I'm saying? The answer is kind of the both for the same groups. Okay, there's life after the military. What does that look like for you? And not just financial, like we said, the whole spectrum of it, but what does that look like for you? And what can you start doing now to prepare so that when you're at that position, you just step right on into it? So, yeah.
Interesting thing about transition is it's an opportunity for you to reflect on who you are and who you want to be. I know it may be difficult because I was only in for 5.5 years, not 20. And I think the longer you're in, probably the harder this might be to do because of the identity thing.
Yeah.
But you have an opportunity to reinvent yourself in some ways.
Yes.
Who do you want to be?
Who do you want to be?
What situation do you want to be in? It's an opportunity to rewrite the narrative, write that next story from chapter 1.
I love it. I love it. Write your own story. Tell your own story. Because all this while, somebody, you weren't really free. You know what I'm saying? You had some stipulation, what you can or cannot say, how you can or cannot dress, what you can and cannot do with your hair. You know what I'm saying? You had stipulations on you. So now that those stipulations are removed, what does life look like for you? Do you want to color your hair different? Nails. For us women, we go crazy sometimes because now we're able to do these things and not have to worry about being within regulation, type stuff. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. You're able to rewrite your next chapter of your life. So
yeah. Be careful though that you're, not stressing yourself financially with all the going crazy with those things. You got to pamper yourself. Don't get me wrong. But
true that.
You got to take care of yourself. You got to buy new wardrobes and all that stuff, right? I mean, there's certain things that come with transition.
Yeah.
But tie that back to the financial thing. Is make sure it fits in your budget.
Make sure you're financially prepared to wow out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you plan for it and prepare for it, then you can
have at it. Yes. And you know what? You bring up a great point, right? Like when I retired, I did nothing for a year. I didn't work, but I didn't have to work. I traveled. I laid around and watched TV. I exercised when I wanted to. You know what I'm saying? So you want to give yourself, and that, for those, like you said, that have 20 years, 30 years, give yourself some downtime to relax, to unwind. Going from, I just couldn't imagine getting out of the military. And I know people do it into each his own. Getting out of the military one day and the next Monday you back in the civilian clothes. Nobody got time for all that. You want to take some time, if you can, to, relax and just, like you said, reflect on your life to see what do you want your life to be like. Enjoy it. That's why. Give yourself some time, whether it's 3 months, 6 months. I took a whole year and I knew that. I was like, I'm not doing nothing for the first year, or not nothing. My answer was, people would ask me, what do you do now that you retire? I said, I do what the hell I want to do. So, it just, there it is.
Wish we could all do that all the time. Exactly. In some ways, you know what? If you got the right mindset and the right goals, you can pretty much do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever you feel like doing.
Freedom. That's financial freedom. Yep.
Absolutely. So,
yes, sir.
Well, Doctor, I appreciate you being on here, dropping some knowledge. There's going to be a lot of good nuggets of information in this one.
I appreciate it.
So if anybody wants to reach out to her, drannjames.com. That's drannjames.com for those listening. Sometimes I forget that this is on video too. And you can see it scrolling across the bottom. Gotcha. Or you can go on Spotify, Apple, Google, all those different podcast platforms, and you can catch Freedom Battle Buddies of Color on there. I'll have all the links in the description on mine as well. So that's where you can meet up with Dr. Ann James. And I know you were on Clubhouse too. I think we met on there.
I need to get back on Club. That's how we originally met, right? I need to get back on Clubhouse. But yeah, as you mentioned, my website, I'm on LinkedIn, Dr. Ann James, IG at Dr. Ann James, and also on Facebook, Ann James. And Keith, as I mentioned earlier, like you said, you can have it in the show notes with the new year coming up. Not sure when this will air, that type of stuff. But I want to provide your guests with, a lot of, like we said, you need a plan, a place to start. So I have this freebie, it's called an interactive spend plan. It's like you just put in the numbers and it calculates the percentages, how much you should spend in each category, like how much in food, how much on car payments and that type stuff. Once again, everybody's situation is different, but it gets rid of the excuse, oh, I'm not good with money. I don't know where to start. With numbers, I don't know where to start. It does the math for you, and it's a plan to get you started. And it's just adjusted to make it personal for your situation. So I would definitely provide you the link for you to share with your audience.
That's awesome.
Get them started in the new year.
I can't wait to check that out because that's awesome. If nothing else, it gives people just an idea.
An idea.
To frame in their mind of like, oh shoot, I'm spending way too much money on eating out, which is
Oh.
probably all of us. But
yeah, or oh shoot, I wasn't saving for Christmas. You know what I mean? Those little categories that you don't think to save for on a monthly basis. Car registration because it's an annual expense. You know, it's those little things. So
yeah, Christmas is last week. I'm one of those on Christmas. Didn't plan appropriately for Christmas.
Are you one of those? Yeah. See,
it's that's like why you start putting the list together and you're like, we got the money for it, but it was just like, oh shoot, I spent more than I expected.
Well, and that happens. But that's why I say Christmas is the same day every year.
That's right. You know exactly when it is. You have no excuse.
You know exactly when it is. So just start. It goes back to, like we said, planning and putting a set. Say if you spend $1,000, $1,200 this Christmas, okay, that's $100 every month. You know, you can set aside so that when Christmas rolls around, the money is there. Now, staying within your budget is a little bit different, but at least you have $1,200 versus $500. You know, so
depends on what those kids put on that list. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
You know,
that's true. Or you can start with your kids. We can't afford that. It's not in the budget.
Absolutely. You know, it's another thing weird. Birthdays don't change either. It's weird. Same day every year.
Same day, if you remember.
If you remember, Hey, that's what calendars are for. You can set Facebook. Facebook tells you all that stuff, right?
Great point.
So make sure you put your birthday in there so people can remember to send you a gift.
Yeah, exactly.
Good advice right there. Or
great point.
By gift, I mean just the typical inundation of happy birthdays from everybody.
Exactly.
That you get. Yeah. Everybody shows you love one day a year. Anyway.
That's it.
Yep. So once again, I appreciate it. We'll have all this stuff in the show notes. And Clubhouse, we might have to do a little chatting about some collaborations on Clubhouse and maybe talk about money and finances, not only the personal stuff, but real estate, and kind of tie all things in. So we might have to come up with some creative stuff. So listeners, viewers, if you're on Clubhouse, be looking out for something like that. We might have to come up with something. Because I've been feeling the same way. Like, I got to get back on Clubhouse. I got really distracted with finishing college this fall, so really hadn't been on much.
No, you had a good distraction. You had a good reason. I just got tired of it. You know how it is, something so new, you go all crazy. But after a while, it's like, I'm tired. Clubhouse will suck you in if you let it. You know, so
I think the pandemic didn't help that any either, when things were kind of slowing down in the spring. And it just... I don't know, just a lot of late nights. A lot of great connections, though. I'll tell you what. I've had a lot of guests come from Clubhouse, a lot of cool people that I've connected with off of Clubhouse since then. It's an amazing thing, but I think there's a lot of people who just kind of fell off for a little bit. We need to bring it back.
We're gonna bring it back
for old time's sake. Old time last year. So
absolutely.
All right. Once again, I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
Yep.